Welcome to this podcast is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 109. Today's guest is an actress and model. She has appeared in more than 80 films and TV shows. You know her from Dear John, Melrose Place, One Tree Hill, The Vampire Diaries, and of course, she played Jerry's girlfriend with the name that rhymes with the female body part, Dolores, in two Seinfeld episodes. The Junior Mint and the Foundation. Please welcome Susan Walters Ashby. Susan, thanks for joining.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Such a treat. And for my money, Susan, you are the most memorable girlfriend Jerry ever had on the show.
That makes me feel good. It was, I'm really happy that it was me. It could have been so many people that auditioned that day, but I just happened to get lucky.
Yeah, well, then, let's dig it. So let's go back. Wow, 29 years now. The Junior Mint aired in March. You just came off two of our favorite shows, a little Matlock, a little Murder, She Wrote. Yeah?
No, I didn't do Matlock. I hadn't done Matlock. Or
Murder. Oh, no?
Oh, you did them after.
And I'll tell you why I know that. Because I got Seinfeld when my daughter was 6 weeks old. And I did Matlock and Murder, She Wrote when she was like 6 months old. Isn't that funny how I remember it? Because I bought a stroller in Wilmington, North Carolina, where Matlock filmed.
Wow. Yes.
I love it.
I got the mother memory. But I had just come off of Dear John, I guess. Yes, yeah. I just come off of Dear John. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit how the role came about. Obviously, there was an audition process. What do you remember about that?
Well, it's kind of funny because my sister was in town visiting me. We both had babies that were, 6 weeks old, 8 weeks old or whatever. And so she was in town visiting me and I'm like, oh man, I got to go to this audition. I said, but just wait in the car and I'll be out in a second and, whatever. Right. And I had worked on it a little bit with my husband at home. And so I went into the audition. I'm sitting there and at that point, her name rhymed with a poet. No, it was the same name as a poet or a car. And my husband said, oh, it must be Nash because there's a poet named Ogden Nash. And then there's a car named Nash, right? Like, I don't know any of this. And please, I have a baby, right? I have a baby and a toddler and a sister in the car. So I'm in there and I'm doing my thing, and blah, 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 blah. And it's this whole giant room full of people, mostly men. And I'm much, much younger then. And you can just feel this energy. And then I go, well, my husband thinks, and I just felt all the energy just go away. And it was really kind of weird, and I was like, damn, I better be good now. I better really be funny because I've just said the H word, And then I did my little audition and it was kind of weird. I didn't know they were starting that day. So they go, oh, we like you the best so far. Go sit in this chair. So I go sit in the it chair and then there's 3 more women who have to go in next. And I'm thinking, well, I kind of don't want my place to get taken in the it chair, but I really got to tell my sister that I might be going off to work. So I ended up getting the job and I ran outside and I said, hey, I'm working. And I went off to work. And then it was on the 4th day of rehearsals that they changed it to a female body part. Like that came down right before we filmed it.
Yeah, we've heard a few stories around this. So originally, too, wasn't the name Cloris? Is that accurate? Do you remember that at all? That your name was Cloris at some point? No. Okay, interesting.
But don't quote me on anything because
no, we're not about trivia or anything. We were just curious how it all transpired. So originally it was car, and then it changed to female body part.
And then what happened was. We were sitting on the little couch in Jerry's living room and, just kind of flirting around or whatever. And then the next day it came that it was, we're kind of playing it as if it was a naughty word, right? Like in rehearsal. Mm-hmm. And then the next day it came down that it rhymed with a female body part, which is pretty funny. So that was for 2 days. And then, I'll never forget. And it's like, thank God I grew up on a soap opera and had a lot of dialogue, to figure out quickly because the audience was there and Larry Charles came down and handed me like blue pages. And it was that final scene that was so funny. So I didn't even have a chance to hear Jerry say any of that. And, he's really funny. And usually you use rehearsal as a time to get used to how funny the person is. So instead, I was just digging into my hands. My hands were bloody after that scene. And that was the first time it was really said, was that really funny scene. So it was a good one.
Nice. And the him yelling Dolores out the window, right? The showstopper. Was it what was that like for you watching with the audience? Was that just like, the ovation must have been just kind of the reveal, right? At the end?
They were laughing so hard. The whole audience was. And I used that little scene in my audition tape for forever. And I could just see how much I was laughing on the inside when he said it. What was interesting is that the episode was called The Junior Mint. So it was really about the surgery. You know what I mean? And then the other B storyline kind of really just took over.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it a B episode. I think they were two A's. Yes. I think that's the, the uniqueness of this episode. You just mentioned it's called The Junior Mint, but boy, do people remember Mulva, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, just to go back to going back to the audition with your sister in the car, so that was, it was season 4 of Seinfeld, right? They just went on Thursday night. So were you, you were clearly aware, but you were a big fan of the show?
No, wait, was it season 4 or season 3?
4.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Right. It was in the season with the arc. So this was one of the episodes that was kind of just I wouldn't call it a one-off, but it wasn't.
I'll tell you what was crazy for me. When I auditioned for the show, I was not aware of how funny and how popular Seinfeld was. It wasn't this thing, right? And then I auditioned because I would have been a lot more nervous. I auditioned for the show. I got the job. I was nervous, but I wasn't that nervous. And then between the time that I filmed the episode and the time that the episode came out, the episodes prior to that blew it up. You know what I mean? So
right. Yeah, I think the contest was before it, which really blew it up. Yeah.
So all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I just did this show. Oh my God, am I going to be funny enough? Is this going to work? Because it became a big deal in that amount of time. And then I got really nervous about my episode airing.
Well, like we've been saying, you definitely stole the show.
It was so funny.
It became pretty much like O'Hara said, the A story, even with the Junior Mint.
And it also lasted. The whole effect of that episode lasted for so long, because I remember 4 years after, somebody got in trouble for talking about it at the water cooler at work. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're showing that episode on the news and everything. It was crazy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like O'Hara at the top, man. It's definitely the most memorable of Jerry's girlfriends. Mulva, it's stuck with everyone for this long. 30.
Like 30 I said, I'm very lucky that I happened to be the one that got it, because I don't even know if I would have gotten an audition for it 3 months after that, because the show had become so popular.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like you said, not knowing maybe helped you with the nerves.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But then they did bring you back, so maybe talk about that a little bit. I was curious, they could have brought any of his girlfriends back. They chose you for a reason. How did that come about? The season 8?
It was crazy. That was really lucky. I was in New Orleans. So now the child who was 6 weeks old is now 3.5. Okay. So it's that much later. And I was in New Orleans doing a series called The Big Easy. And I had, really, really light blonde hair. And I just had the baby in the other episode. So in this, there was like a 30-pound difference to me, I think. And, I see Jason Alexander on a plane, and we started talking, and he's like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, that was so much fun, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, we should have you back. And then I got asked back after that. So he kind of got me back on the show. So
that's great. That's great.
Yeah. I literally flew in for that day and flew back out to New Orleans, and nobody knew it was Mulva because I looked so different.
Now, so season 4, season 8, obviously no Larry David. And this was Jerry's first kind of episode, kind of running things, the foundation. Did you or maybe you didn't know that. But did you feel any differences between the first time you're there and this time, or was it similar?
Well, I think what I remember, and I could be wrong, like I said, I only came in for that day because one of my scenes was outside on the lot as if we were in New York.
Yes. Yeah. With the vest.
Yes. How weird is that? I wore that to work and they're like, hey, just for that.
Oh, really? That was just your clothes you happened to have on?
Yeah, that was just my clothing I had on. And then we were inside the little diner. And I think Jerry the show had just been sold to syndication like that week, I believe. And I remember looking at Jerry across, that little Formica table and thinking, wow, this man it's really done well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yet here he was, this star of this really popular show. He had just, made so much money in syndication. And there was a director, I believe the director's name was Andy. And
Andy Ackerman,
Yeah. And Andy would still come over and say, hey, Jerry, try this or try that. And Jerry was just so humble. He could have just been anybody sitting across. And it was this man with all this success. So that's what I remember from the 2 episodes.
Oh, that's nice to hear, actually. Yeah. I mean, we can kind of jump back to the season 4, the Junior Mint, as you kind of remembered Andy Ackerman on the set of the season 8 one.
Right.
Tom Sharonis was the director in the season 4. You mentioned Larry Charles. I believe Larry Charles came up with the rhyme with a female body part, maybe.
Larry Charles, but Larry David came down. Larry David came down. Lot.
Yeah. Maybe talk us through that. How was he on the set, Larry David, working with him?
I just remember Larry Charles because he had long dark hair, right? He gave me the sides and then said, we just wrote this or whatever. And then Jerry and I are in the apartment. And so I remember Larry David saying, do you understand the scene? Or, something like really cool. But, it was kind of one of those things because I'm looking at the scene going, oh my God. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. And we ran it real quickly. And then he's like, okay, that's good. And so he was right there. But like I said, at that time, I didn't know how famous these men were or were going to be the next month. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's a really cool producer and a really cool writer. And I'd worked with really cool people on Dear John. And so it wasn't like, I think I would have been a lot more intimidated had I known, had I looked.
Yeah. But I guess it sounds like maybe you didn't know that they were that, but you could sort of sense.
Oh, I knew how good they were.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So to that point, it must have been like, okay, I'm around professionals. These guys are great. They know. Yeah, that sort of thing must have been.
And I did know how popular the show was because I remember I knew, I'm so full of crap because of course I knew how great the show was because I remember already being a fan of Kramer's, already being a fan of, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, but it just hadn't exploded to the same extent, I think. Because, it's intimidating being a guest star walking in. What helped me is that I had just been on Dear John for 4 seasons, 3.5 seasons, same network or whatever.
Yeah, hell of a show. Judd Hirsch. So, you mentioned some of these characters like Kramer and Julia, and I believe you only had scenes with Jerry and then those quick kind of intro scenes with Kramer and George, which were hilarious, where they introduce themselves and then you don't say your name.
Right. Right. And they're trying to get me to say my name or whatever.
Yeah.
And, people have asked me about that. And what I thought was, because, coming off of Dear John, those were very professional comedic actors, like Judd just didn't wing it. And Jerry Burns just didn't wing it. They rehearsed. And Kramer, he like practiced sliding into the room. It wasn't just by chance, all that stuff really had timing and it was really worked out. No, it was hysterical. It was a good week. As my sister sat in the house.
Yeah. Good babysitter to have. Yeah. So you mentioned Kramer and Kramer's girlfriend at the time on our show, Ann Tallman. I don't know if you know her, but she, as myth has it, she says she was in the crowd that week where they were struggling to come up with a name. Right? Clearly, they moved from the car and the poet to the female body part. So she was in the crowd, and actually they asked the crowd, hey, does anyone have a name? And supposedly she says she came up with the name Dolores. So I'm curious, like, if you if you remember any of that, if that was subject to the actors or not. No,
I don't remember any of that.
Right. But I mean, it's crazy.
It probably could have happened. I just don't remember. I was, nervous.
Yeah. So tell us a little about, so we also had Dr. Wexler on, who was the doctor. Like, did you have a lot of interaction with some of the other guest stars on the show?
No, but I feel like somebody named Sterling was the patient, right? Was there a guy? Yes.
I believe that was his name. Yes. Yeah. Roy.
And I think his name was Sterling because that's such a cool name.
Yeah, the guy that played
Sherman
Roy.
Howard was the actor. Yeah, yes. Roy.
Yeah.
And I worked with him. I think he had guest spotted on Dear John. So he was definitely a familiar face, It's just funny watching the show because so many people that I've worked with were, even then had been on the show. I think Bryan Cranston had already been on the show at that point, maybe
Phil Morris too, right? The Love Boat.
Who?
Phil Morris, who played Jackie Childs. He was on the new Love Boat, which I thought you were on maybe an episode.
I was on the new Love Boat. I'm looking at my husband right now because he was also on the new Love Boat.
Yeah, but Phil Morris, who played Jackie Childs, was on the
Okay, but do you know who I worked with on the new Love Boat? I worked with Robert Urich. Yes, I was his love interest.
We prefer your husband on Melrose Place, by the way.
Yeah, we'll take the poly. We did watch Melrose Place. Me and Ohio were fans of Melrose Place.
That was kind of funny when we worked together on the same episode of Melrose Place. We've worked together often, and it's just kind of funny when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, hi. Hey, there he is.
How are you?
What's up?
How are you?
Good.
He probably remembers more about my filming Seinfeld than I do because, like I said, I had a baby.
So it's funny. You mentioned all these shows like that you were part of. We'll call them cultish shows, right? If you will, right? Like,
yeah, how fun is that?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I'll admit I'm a big Young and the Restless guy. Like Jack Abbott drove me crazy, and
love Victor Newman. I bet
Victor Newman.
Lyndon can do a mean Victor Newman imitation.
But there's such a passionate fan base, right? Like Young and the Restless, you name it, or Seinfeld. Like, where do you, I guess, these days get most recognized? I know they did one or two episodes of Seinfeld, but I bet it's up there.
Interestingly enough, okay, first of all, just between my age and the pandemic and having lived in Georgia for 6 years, I don't audition as much as I used to. And we certainly don't audition in the room with people. You know what I mean? Now it's on. But however, as far as the business went, I've been first choice on dramatic pilots because I've walked in and the director's gone, oh, that's Mulva. Let's hire her. So industry-wise, definitely Seinfeld. If I'm walking through an airport, well, it used to be Young and the Restless, but then like Vampire Diaries kind of takes over and that sort of thing. Yeah. I just had some little girls ask me if I was Carol Lockwood the other day in a parking lot. And I was like, God, who is that? It was like this vague thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was her, so it's kind of fun to have been a part of some of these. What did you call them? Cultish?
I mean, they have these fan bases that are, it's interesting. I'm glad to hear that you said that, it helps you in the industry when you say you're on Seinfeld. We've talked to a lot of guests, and a couple of them have said it hurt them. For the majority of them, it's helped.
Oh, please. How can it have hurt anybody? Seriously, I auditioned for, it was like this big deal CBS pilot that was being produced by Brandon Tartikoff at CBS. And it was like the pilot and blah, blah, blah. Very dramatic. They wanted a star. And literally I walked in and they went, oh, let's hire Mulva. Like it had nothing to do with Mulva or comedy or anything. Right, I can't imagine it having hurt anybody. But
I don't want to get, it was just that their character on Seinfeld was very over the top funny. And then when they tried for dramatic roles, the person just kept seeing them as funny. And it was But who knows? The industry could be tough. I don't know.
Right.
We just
and I would say Mulva, like she was kind of cutesy, like kinda, what I mean? Like didn't go too high or too low. Like was just like
Yeah. I didn't have a real broad character. I was definitely the straight person. Yeah.
And it's funny, you keep calling her Mulva. Is that do you describe her as Mulva when you say you're on Seinfeld, or do you go Dolores?
Oh, well, that's interesting.
We go Mulva.
Mulva.
Yeah, I think the fans go Mulva.
Dolores. Yeah. People will say to me, "Did you play Mulva on Seinfeld?" They don't say, "Did you play Dolores?"
Right. I mean, to your point, I mean, the show could have been called Mulva. I mean, the episode title should have been really Mulva. That would have been
Seinfeld. It could have just been Mulva.
Would have been confusing maybe at first, but we would have got it eventually. But yeah, I mean, a lot of, like you said, like working on the set, you didn't have many scenes with the other characters. It was mainly just with Jerry. But what about behind the scenes? Was there, from what we've heard from guest stars? I mean, obviously Jason, if he saw you on that plane, years later, there must have been some.
I know, and that was interesting because he was really welcoming to me. We weren't, when you're on a sitcom, you rehearse every day and everybody's kind of there. But I had a cold, Jerry had a cold. So there wasn't a lot of like talking, hanging out, whatever. It was just very work. I remember he didn't feel good that week. So it was kind of funny that it all came together the way it did. Yeah.
Yeah. And, whenever I think of the scenes you're in, I can't help but think of, you and Jerry embracing and saying, "Oh, Jerry." And he just says, "Oh, you." I mean, it's just brilliant. Like, was there that episode, Jerry talks about it. There's some ad-libbing where he says, "Let's go, slice that fat bastard up." Like, anything else you could remember, like that was different in the script, or did you ad-lib anything?
It's literally that final scene in his apartment where I pull out the playbill and he says, "Oh, you," and I say, "You don't know my name, do you?" That was brand new an hour before we filmed it.
Wow.
Like I can still see the blue sheet of paper going, "Oh my God." So there wasn't any, there really wasn't any rehearsal, about that. It was new.
Joseph Puglia, is that what he calls you?
The idea, yeah. Wait, what does he call me?
I think he goes to Joseph Puglia. Is that?
Yeah, it was something. But some of that had already been in there, but just some of it was new right before we filmed, and I remember that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Going back to, you mentioned something during the audition that kind of struck me. If you don't mind touching upon a little bit more, as because a lot of we like to get inside baseball with actresses. You said when you mentioned you had a husband during the audition,
I know I shouldn't have said that.
Is that a thing? I mean, I could see it being a thing. No, I'm just curious. No.
However, because my husband and I have actually directed a couple things together, and everybody wants to think that the person who's auditioning is the character, right? Just the character. And so I'm auditioning for this attractive single woman who, Jerry picks up and then cancer, blah, blah. So the fact that then all of a sudden you're walking in and it's like, you're mentioning your husband and like you mentioning your child. I just found at that age, at that part of my career, because I was 29, maybe 29, 20, maybe 30. I can't remember how old I was when I had Savannah, but wait, it was 29 years ago.
It was 93.
So I was almost 30, right? So at that time, I didn't mention husband that, you just don't.
No, it makes sense. I can see it making sense. I was just curious.
Wasn't like that there were men hitting on you in the room. It was just the energy just made more sense to not mention it.
Right. Yeah, obviously you got the part, so it wasn't like they were holding it against you. I mean,
exactly.
Well, what's funny is years later they used a similar line, and they maybe stole it from you when George was talking with his waitress, and she mentions a boyfriend, and they ended up not going out on dates, and they broke up. So who knows? It might have stemmed from something. So you might have given them an idea.
But what was really cool is that other episode. The
Foundation?
No. Yes. That had No, yeah, the foundation. That had a really interesting concept to it, which I think holds true, that Jerry became more attractive to other women once he was taken by another woman. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I mean, I just remember that was the only part of the story I was involved in. But I thought there is something to be said for that.
They used that kind of theme earlier in an earlier season where George was a wedding ring to a party to try and attract women,
Exactly.
which is a little bit the same realm of like, you know that you're someone else likes you, maybe there's a reason.
Okay. Yeah, he can go the distance.
And there's another one that's even funnier, I think, when George carries around the picture of the model to show other girls, hey, I dated this model, so now I'm allowed into the forbidden territory of seeing other models, because he just has like a picture of her, like, hey, this is my ex-girlfriend. So they're all like, oh, wow. He must.
How great were those characters? They're just great. They're great. They were all great. And then we were also, and I am a huge fan of Veep. How great is that? They've all gone. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Julia's the one that has kind of taken it to another level, right? For the Jason's had an incredible career.
Hey, we just saw Jason Alexander on
Maisel, right?
Gemstones? No, we saw
Mrs. Maisel.
Mrs. Maisel, yeah, we saw him on Mrs. Maisel last night.
Yep, along with Vianne Cox, another Seinfeld alum. She was in Mrs. Maisel.
Who?
Vianne Cox.
Oh, interesting.
She was Toby. She was a season 5. So I mean, Seinfeld alums are everywhere. It's crazy, but
all over Murder, She Wrote, and Matlock too, which I find a bit fascinating. I don't know why. Was there did Mark Hirschfeld? He wasn't the casting director on Matlock or Murder, She Wrote, right? Just this. I guess it was just during the time everyone's auditioning.
Hey, you know who cast me on Seinfeld? Oh yeah,
Hirschfeld, right? Probably.
Yeah, but it was a man and a woman. There was
Oh yeah.
Because I sent them flowers at one point because it was so funny that my episode was all over the news with the water cooler incident, and I remember saying thank you for making me infamous. But
that's a class move right there.
Yeah, I like it.
It was funny. It was pretty funny. Yeah, I forget. Yes. So I don't know if he.
Meg Lieberman. That was.
Yes. I don't know if there was a connection with the Matlock, because that was 6 months later. Yeah,
maybe that was a connection. I don't know. We've been on this Matlock and Murder She Wrote kick for some reason. I'm like, I'm like a 7-year-old.
I can't even remember that. I remember doing that whole thing. I'm like, I've done like the geriatric tour this summer. Yeah.
Well, Matlock, obviously, I know you said they filmed in Wilmington, but obviously they were quote unquote based in Atlanta, so maybe that's why it had a special place in your heart. It's funny you mentioned your kids. By the way, congratulations. We hear you're going to be a grandma.
Who told you that?
Congrats.
Well, social media, you posted. What do you mean?
Oh, did I post it? Oh, I did post it. Yes, I am going to be a grandma. I'm very excited about it. So is Lyndon. We're totally excited.
Congratulations to you guys. So we ask a lot of people from Seinfeld, do your kids watch any of the episodes? Are they into Seinfeld?
No, I don't. Grace might be. I know our youngest daughter, who's the one that I just had when I did Seinfeld, she's a lawyer, so she doesn't get to watch much television. But my dad watches Seinfeld every night,
that's great.
To this day. And it's just so funny because he'll text me. He's like, well, you're on again. Or you made a little money today, blah, 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 blah. And it's funny. My dad watches, and I think my brother watches. I remember my brother, Glenn, was like, finally, you're doing something that I'll actually watch. He wouldn't watch the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
who doesn't love Seinfeld?
Who doesn't love Seinfeld? Yeah. I mean, and Dolores, for crying out loud, in the Junior Mint episode, which is it's an all-time episode. I mean, it's like being part of TV history. It's got to feel pretty special.
I remember because even the level of actor I was, obviously I wasn't a star. I was just like the plugging along medium working actor. And I remember going, wow, I was on Seinfeld, in this very memorable part. And then I also did a commercial with the Taco Bell dog. And I remember I was like, I've arrived. You remember the Taco Bell dog?
Yeah. That was good. Yeah.
I'm like, between Seinfeld and the Taco Bell dog, what more do you need?
I mean, and Georgia wins a championship this year. I mean, you got to be pretty happy.
Actually, Lyndon said something the other after the Rams won the Super Bowl. Oh man, I can't remember what he said. He said something about we should all be very afraid because we're living in my universe because Georgia won and the Rams have won. So obviously I'm controlling things.
Now, is it because of Stafford or what's just being in LA, you like the Rams?
Well, actually for me I tried to be a Falcons fan having come from Georgia.
Was Todd Gurley?
Yes. And then Todd Gurley went to the Rams. And that's when I became a Rams fan. But then the Rams came to Los Angeles. So then it all just kind of worked out really well. Were they in LA when Todd Gurley? Well, so it happened at the same time. Whatever. Yeah. So it all just worked out.
Gurley's been out of the league for 2 years now. It's just he's 27.
He was, I just loved him as a Georgia player.
Agreed.
Now, I've also always had a cougar crush on Matthew Stafford, which I will admit to ever since he was at the Lions.
Jesus.
Lyndon goes, you shouldn't even admit this. But it's kind of a joke, actually. It's kind of a joke, just so you know, joke. We have this, me and my sister and my mom have this whole joke thing going. And I won't elaborate. But so it was great that now Matthew Stafford's with the Rams also. And Sony Michel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God.
Little Maddie Stafford.
Lyndon's making fun of me over here.
So is it Herschel Walker or Gurley would be your favorite?
Oh, Gurley. Definitely Gurley. I was supposed to go to Georgia the year after they won the national championship. And then I didn't. I ended up going to New York instead. But so I remember being very excited at that time. But I became a Georgia fan more when we moved to Georgia. And then our older daughter went to Georgia.
That's awesome. I mean, there's few connections in life, but you mentioned talking to your father about Seinfeld and, laughing with your husband about football. It's just, for some reason, Seinfeld and sports going to have that unique connection.
Definitely.
So, Susan, what are you up to these days? What can, where can we find you?
Well, I just completed my second episode of The Flash, which I don't know if y'all know what that show is. It's on the CW. I play a super, super smart scientist, believe it or not. And it's extremely challenging when I'm on the show because, you go in, it's kind of like with Seinfeld, you go in as a guest spot and you have to just jump in. This, I have to jump in and say a lot of really scientific things and sound extremely intelligent the whole time I'm saying it. So that's always fun. And then I just started another project that I can't really say anything about at the moment. And I did an episode of a new HBO show called Minx, which is supposed to be a really cool show set in the 70s. Lots of naked men, I think, in this show.
Our audience will love that.
Yeah, it seems to be the new thing all of a sudden on these shows with the Tommy Lee thing and everything else.
Yes, I played a women's liber magazine editor. So it was fun.
Cool. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, looking forward to it. And listen, Susan, we can't thank you enough. Like I said, you are the most memorable Jerry girlfriend, hands down.
Aw, that's nice to hear. That's nice to hear.
I mean, we're super proud of your career. We love seeing you with your husband and everything else. So
congrats on the grandchild. That's going to be.
Thank you. So Lyndon has already decided he's going to be called the Dude. Just Dude. His
nice.
name is Dude. Maybe mine should be Mulva.
Dolores.
How fitting.
That's funny. All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Susan.
Thanks so much, Susan.
Okay. Bye.